The following story may not be appropriate for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. Welcome to Whisperwood Stories. Today we're going to read a story from Nosleep from user DreadfulFilm. Let's begin. I wish I never opened my father's box. When my father died, he left me his box. A part of me wishes he hadn't, but the truth is, I knew one day it would be mine. He always said it would be, like some terrible inheritance. Like a burden he'd pass down one way or another. Even in death, he was right. Dad wasn't the kind of man you write fond eulogies about. He wasn't the kind you remembered with fond nostalgia or a soft chuckle at family gatherings. He was the kind you whispered about behind closed doors and prayed with everything you had that he'd change before it was too late. He had a way of looming over everything, controlling everything. Our house, our lives, my childhood. And when he wasn't looming or controlling, he was watching. Everything. Always. "It's your inheritance," he'd say, fingers brushing the dark wooden box like it was alive. "Someday you'll understand why." But I never understood. Not as a kid, not as an adult. Not until the box was handed to me, cold and heavy, at the funeral home. "Leave it," my husband, Rob, said when I brought it into the house. His voice was soft, like he was worried it would break something if he spoke too loudly. "I can't," I said. "I wish I could, but it's mine." It sat on our dining room table for days. Ellie, our 6-year-old, asked about it constantly, her curious eyes shining like it was some kind of treasure chest. "Is it a treasure?" she asked, tilting her head. "No," I said too quickly, a little too sharply. "It's just something Grandpa wanted me to have." Ellie didn't push, but I could feel her gaze lingering on the box. It wasn't the way she stared at it, curious, innocent, but something in the way her eyes lingered, like she could hear its whispers too. I didn't tell her, but I could feel it, the way the box seemed to look back at her, as if it knew she was there. We never talked about it directly. But when the sun dipped low and the house settled into its usual suffocating silence, I could hear it again. The soft, almost imperceptible murmurs coming from the box, tugging at the edges of my mind, like an itch under your skin you just can't scratch. I hadn't touched it in months at this point. I hadn't dared, but every night the whispers got louder, until it was all I could hear. My nerves frayed like the edges of old fabric, snapping with tension. Ellie hadn't noticed, or maybe she didn't care to, but it was all I could think about. The shadows grew longer, darker, and the box seemed to pull them in with it. I started waking up to the smell of old wood, like something decaying, and I could swear the air around it grew colder every night. One night, the whispers grew sharp, like 1,000 needles pressing against my skull. I didn't want to open it, but I couldn't help myself. I had to know. I had to know what he left me, what he left behind. I gave in. I opened it. Inside was nothing. Not empty exactly. The dark interior seemed deeper than it should have been, like it stretched into some bottomless void. Staring into it made my stomach twist, but what made my breath catch in my throat was the smell. Faint but unmistakable. Pall Mall cigarettes, sweat, single malt whiskey. My father. I slammed the lid shut, but the box didn't stay quiet. And then a few days later, I saw him. Ellie woke me up in the middle of the night, crying about a man in her room. What man? I asked, flipping on the light, my heart racing in my chest.
The pale-faced one,
she whispered, her voice barely audible as she pointed to the corner. There was no one there, but as I bent down to comfort her, I caught the most subtle movement out of the corner of my eye. A figure, thin and colorless, disappearing into the hallway. Then came the faint smell of cigarettes, whiskey, and sweat. I couldn't say it out loud, but I knew. I knew who she had seen. Rob said it was just a nightmare, but Ellie wasn't the only one seeing him. The pale-faced man appeared in the hallway, at the foot of my bed, reflected in the mirror when I turned away. He wasn't just there, he lingered, his hollow eyes meeting mine, his presence prickling at something deep inside me, something I thought I had buried long ago. I could feel it then, the shadow of something I couldn't outrun, something I thought I had put to rest. My father's sickness. One night, when Rob was working late and Ellie was asleep, I opened the box again. I don't know what I expected. Maybe to find a way to make it stop. I wanted to inspect it, see if there was something I had missed. But instead, there was something inside this time. A photo. It was of me, maybe 8 or 9 years old. My father's hand rested on my shoulder, but it didn't look like his hand. It was pale, thin and bony, curling around me like it belonged to something that didn't belong in this world. I turned the photo over. Written on the back in his shaky handwriting were the words, "He's always watching. You cannot escape him." The box didn't just hold memories. It held a piece of my father's sickness, the weight of all the things I couldn't explain as a child, but now felt with perfect clarity. The pale-faced man wasn't a stranger. He was the shadow of something my father had let in. Or maybe something he was. Ellie began waking up more often, crying about the man in her room.
"He's angry,"
she said one night, her little voice trembling.
"He says I have to go with him to a secret place, that it won't hurt."
"No," I whispered, holding her tight as the weight of the words crushed my chest. "He's lying." But I knew the truth. The box didn't just pass down, it infected. My father's sickness had been handed to me, and now it was trying to take my daughter. That night, I carried the box to the backyard. The air was cold, and the pale-faced man was waiting, standing just beyond the tree line. His hollow eyes met mine, his mouth twitching like he was trying to smile. "You can't destroy it," he said, his voice like dry leaves scraping against the pavement. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened the box one last time. Inside, I saw every moment I'd ever buried. The times I convinced myself were misunderstandings or dreams. His hand on my shoulder, thigh. The silence I was told to keep. I stared at the pale-faced man, and for the first time, I didn't look away.
You're not him,
I said, my voice breaking.
You're just what he made.
His expression didn't change, but something shifted. The air grew colder, the world around me quiet and suffocating. You destroy it, he repeated, each word more menacing than the last.
Watch me,
I said, my voice hoarse. I dropped the box into the fire pit, dousing it with gasoline. The pale-faced man stepped closer, his hollow eyes wide, but I didn't care. I struck the match, and as the flames took hold of the box, I heard him speak one last time. You can't burn it away. I looked up. He was gone. Ellie doesn't wake up crying anymore. The house feels lighter, warmer. But sometimes, late at night, I still smell the faint scent of cigarettes and whiskey mixed with sweat. It's fleeting, but enough to remind me. I know the box is gone, but I also know that its shadow will linger forever. My father's secrets didn't die with him, and his sickness isn't something you can just burn away completely. But I'll be damned if I ever let it touch her. Thank you for listening to Whisperwood Stories. If you enjoyed, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe down below. Do you have a story that you'd like me to read here? Consider commenting or sending it to whisperwoodsubmissions@gmail.com. The story in this video was read with the author's permission. Thank you again for listening, and be sure to check out the original Reddit post. Want to support me? Check the link below where you can leave a tip if you wish. And remember, don't let the shadows get too close. Good night.